Hey, it's Liz D'Alto, and this is the Untamed the Wild Soul Woman podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untamed the Wild Soul Woman is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. Hey y'all, it's Elizabeth, your host for the Untamed the Wild Soul podcast. Apologies in advance. I am coming to you on the tail end of an amazing trip in Boulder, and I forgot my microphone. So if the sound quality is a little lower than usual, that's what's going on here. Hopefully you can make it through, and we'll be back with higher quality sound in the next episode. But I'm pumped to answer this question that just came in this week. It feels super relevant, super important, no matter where you are in your journey. Before I jump into the question, I want to remind you, if you're listening in real time, that Friday, June 3rd, 2016 is the last day to pre-order the Untame Yourself book for free. That's right, it is free. You just cover the shipping. You could do that at untameyourself.com/pre-order. And we have extended the early bird Wild Soul Insider offer through June 18th. So you can still check that out at untameyourself.com/early-insider. So now for today's question. Helen asked, how do I live with integrity while still honoring my intuition? Which means I sometimes need to change my mind or go back on agreements I previously have made. And this is a great question. This is something, man, in the last 2 years, I'll share with you all. I've done this really well sometimes. I've done this really poorly sometimes. There's not a black and white or like hard and fast answer here. But here's some things that I have discovered. Number one, in my perspective, the highest form of integrity is honoring yourself. And so, excuse me. Honoring your intuition, which means honoring really your highest and best self, right? Your soul's wisdom, your highest truth is the highest form of integrity there is. And so there are other things that people consider to be included in integrity, things like finish what you started, keep your commitments. But think of it this way. If you've ever been on the receiving end of someone showing up for something that you knew damn well they didn't want to be there for, or you yourself have done that, right? You said yes to something you were really a no for, and then you went. And then you felt crappy while you were there. You might have felt resentful. Your energy might have been low. You're not actually bringing or adding value to that situation anyway, right? Or having someone in your space who doesn't want to be there. It's like it creates like this energy vacuum. It's like sucking the energy out of the room because everyone knows either you don't want to be there or that person doesn't want to be there. And then you have to be inauthentic and pretend you want to be there. And so that's not an integrity at all. So just want to be really clear that forcing yourself to do things that you don't actually want to do, that aren't like a real yes for you, that's not an integrity for the benefit of others. But here's the thing. Sometimes things that are a yes, it doesn't feel good, right? But it feels right and it feels true. Okay, so I've been getting back into working out lately. And so there are some mornings when I wake up and I don't want to go, but it feels right and it feels true, so I go, right? I'm not like super over the moon excited to go some days I really am, but I show up knowing that it feels right and it feels true. It's in alignment with the goals that I have. So something that might be really useful in this situation is to definitely have some really clear goals or intentions or objectives in the short term and in the long term. And short term and long term are relative terms. You know, for me, short term is like the next month, long term might be the next year or the next 3 years. So if you know what your outcome is that you're going for, what is the result that you want, what is the dream that you're working towards, you can measure your yeses and nos and your choices against, does this really help me move towards that thing, right? And so the other thing is this, something I really started to notice last year, and I wrote a blog post about this, we'll put it in the show notes, is the difference between impulse and intuition. And I was really, really unclear about this for a while. I was making these impulsive decisions. And impulsive often is that initial gut hit on something. And what I realized about myself, and this may or may not apply to you, so test it out. What I realized about myself is that if I'm not emotionally clear, that's not a great time for me to make a decision. So sometimes an impulse might come in when I'm kind of all over the place emotionally. I need to let it simmer. I need to sit with it, let the dust settle, let my emotions calm down a little bit so I can be clear and then drop into my body and then tap into my intuition and make a choice based on my intuition, not my impulse. So I hope that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense or you want to clarify anything there, come on into the Facebook group, untameyourself.com/Facebook, and feel free to ask a question about that because there's a distinct difference. And so, yeah, we're super, super cultured and conditioned to sacrifice, to struggle, and to put other people first. And so changing your mind or going back on agreements you made, as long as you do it with grace, is an amazing, amazing practice to have. So if you haven't read my book, in one of the chapters, there's a whole framework around how to have a courageous conversation. I highly recommend that because when you bump into these situations where you realize that you need to change your mind or that you need to break an agreement, using that courageous conversation framework makes it a million times easier. I've gotten lots and lots and lots of positive feedback on that framework. And then what's cool too, it goes back to, those of you who've been with me for years now, remember when I did the I Shine, You Shine campaign. The idea is when I shine my own light, I give other people permission to do the same, inspired by that famous Marianne Williamson quote from A Return to Love. And so when we honor ourselves, we give other people permission to do the same. And so in a lot of ways, it's really leading by example. And this has come up in the conversation a lot over the last few weeks. But for those of us on a growth path or a spiritual path or an expansion path, whatever you want to call it, our level of comfort when things are uncertain or uncomfortable, our ability to tolerate discomfort is really, really, really going to be in proportion to our growth and to our expansion, to our transformation, to our healing, because we have to get uncomfortable. One of the most uncomfortable endeavors of our lifetime, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're in it with me, is deprogramming, is taking a look at what are the scripts that run in our mind consciously and subconsciously, what's informing our choices, and what's actually helpful and useful and aligned with our highest and best self and what isn't. And there's a lot of stuff that isn't. It comes from our families of origin, from schooling, from religion. It comes from marketing and media. There's so much in our minds that we agree to because it's just been stuffed in there repeatedly. So now this is our chance to unwind that and then upload what actually feels true, what actually feels in alignment. And that might mean canceling things. So one of the things that I've started doing is I take a little more time up front when I make choices rather than doing that impulsive thing that I mentioned earlier. This way, either way, it's going to take some time. And what I realized was I'd rather take the time up front to make a solid choice than to make a choice and then have to change my mind and then clean up the mess later on. So I hope that's super helpful there. Again, if you have any questions, pop into the Facebook group. And also I just want to make sure those of you who are not on our email list at untameyourself.com, I share things twice a week. I send out emails on either Tuesday or Wednesday and Friday. So you get 2 emails a week from us. And this is stuff that I don't necessarily always share on social media, don't necessarily share on the podcast. We have some extra little tidbits going on in the email. So if you're not subscribed there, head on over to untameyourself.com and you can enter your email. There's a whole bunch of different places where you could do it. Just enter your email to get on our list. This way you don't miss out on anything that we're not mentioning here or that we're not mentioning on social media if you follow us there. So thank you so, so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
The first thing is, the really cool thing about you feeling ashamed is that only good people feel ashamed. Only honorable people feel ashamed. Okay, so that feeling bad about not having been the person that you want to be, the person living up to your own standards, that's actually an awesome sign. And it feels so gross, so awful. We want to turn away from it, right? So someone will say, oh, you shouldn't feel that bad. Everybody does it. That doesn't help at all. And it doesn't help at all. And by the way, women do this to men all the time. They're feeling terrible about something and we try to talk them out of it. That just makes them feel disrespected.